there, it's Linda from Lányos Handmade, and today we're doing another marathon sew. It's going to be all about sewing quick holiday gifts. So hopefully you get a lot of good ideas from all the videos that you see. I am going to sew up a quick doggy bandana or cat, doesn't matter what your pet is, guinea pig, hamster, gerbil. Anyway, I'm going to sew up a quick doggy bandana. There's no pattern for this, but I'm going to, I describe it in the video how I cut it out, but I'm also going to write down in the comments below how I put this all together so that you can make your own pattern if you want to do it a few times, or if you just want to cut direct your fabric. I'll put the description below on how to do it. Now, the other thing I'm going to make is I'm going to make a Pennyroyal pouch. So I've got one thing for the pet in the family and one thing for the caretaker, and that takes care of both of them. You can even do the matching fabrics if you like. This is the Pennyroyal pouch, and the pattern is from Cork and Copper Designs, and it comes in 4 sizes. This one here is just the medium sized one, and the base on it is just massive, so it's great for holding lots of things. Now with this one, I ran out of octopus fabric, and they really like octopus. So I could only do half and half. So I will be showing you in the video how to cut so that you can get half and half different on both sides, okay? Instead of like she has the pattern piece with one whole piece that you can use. I'll show you how to do half and half if you want two-tone. So all the links for everything, materials and pattern, everything are going to be below. And all the links for the other Marathon Sewists are going to be below too. And oh yes, when you're doing the doggy bandana, you might want to pre-wash your fabric because this is just cotton. And I'm sure when the dog wears it, it's going to end up getting dirty more than once. So you want to have a fabric that is pre-washed so it doesn't shrink and change size. Okay, so I guess that's all I wanted to say, and I guess we can get started. Okay, so for the doggy or cat, any pet you have, bandana, I don't have a pattern piece, but what I do have is some measurements for you. So I measured the pet's neck, and I got 13 inches, and I added 10 inches on. So that's 23. And then just because I don't like odd numbers, and it doesn't hurt, I made this. I don't know if you can see it all, so I'll tell you. I made this 25 inches. So this bandana is going to be 25 inches the long way. And then I measured down from the neck. Let's pretend that's the head up here. And I measured down from where I wanted the bandana to be tied and down, but not so that they're stepping on it, right? You don't want them stomping on it. And I got 8.5 inches, and I added half an inch on to make 9 because we're going to use half-inch seam allowances. So if you take up the 9, you'll have 8.5 inches going this way, and you'll have 25 going this way. Except what I did do was I folded my fabric too. So I cut on a fold. So I end up having a real big piece, and this big piece is 25. Let's just check again. 25 by 18. And then that way we can make the bandana. Now this is directional fabric, so make sure when you're cutting, if you have directional fabric, that you don't cut this way and have the head here with the little creatures facing the wrong way. So directional fabric. And since it's directional fabric, if I have one bandana, this is going to be the one side, and I want an opposite side with the exact same measurements. Well, if I put them together, sew them together and make them like this, right, they'll end up being wrong sides together. And I have both prints facing the dog's head. Then when I fold it in half, I mean, it's going to be okay on one side. That's the side we have face out. The side facing inside to the dog is going to be upside down, but that's okay. Nobody cares what's on the inside. But on the other hand, if we have it a bit sloppy, then we're going to see, look, this one's upside down. So when we finally sew it together, we want to make sure that one print is always facing one way and the other print is always facing the other way. So this is right, this is wrong, and that's good. Because when we fold it, oh, that's good. Inside, we don't care. And if it ends up getting lopsided on the dog, the inside will show the right way too. So always make sure that you have one print correct and the other inside print wrong when you're sewing these two layers together. I'll remind you as we go along. So now we have a big, huge bandana, and I want to make it a little bit pointy on the bottom, right under the dog's chin, or cat, whatever, squirrel, chipmunk, guinea pig. Okay, so what we do is we fold it in half. So now it's not 25 across here, it's half. And we're going to mark an inch down from here. And we're going to pay attention to our point down here. And we're going to draw a line from the point to here. And that's so faint I can't even see it. Let's try that one more time. Okay, I can see that. So we're going to cut from here down to here. Now, if you don't want to waste this section here, what you can do is do all this with a large piece of paper. So I'm just going to go cut this. Make sure when you're doing it, it's really, really lined up well so that you don't end up with it lopsided. You want all the pieces to be exactly the same. So there I've cut my triangles out. You can see it's missing here. An inch down from here to the point and cut through all the layers. And I did the exact same thing with the other layer underneath, the contrasting layer. Now, if you don't want to do this and lose out on this fabric, if you're trying to save on fabric, get yourself some paper. I think you can see all that in the screen. And you'd have to probably stick together about 4 or 6 pieces of paper and fold the paper just like we folded the fabric. So now what we've got is 2 triangles, and we are going to put them together, wrong sides together. Oh, look, I've left the selvage on too, but that's okay. That's about a 1/2 inch. I'll make sure it doesn't show. So what we do is we line up the square corners, these ones that are not pointy, and we line up the tops and the bottoms, and we pin all around. Now remember, you don't want them facing the same way. This is going this way, and this is going this way, and that's when it's folded over. If the inside is exposed, then it will be the right way up. I'm going to pin this all around, and then we can sew it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, sewing the right sides together. But we have to remember to leave an opening so we can turn it, because we want to turn it right side out afterwards. Now remember, just to show, we've got one bear facing this way and one bear facing this way. And that's because when we fold this in half and tie it on our pet, this can be the inside, this can be the outside, this will be his head, this is looking good, and if it happens to slip, this is still looking good, right? And there is one more thing I want to add, and that's we are sewing on bias here of the fabric, and every single side you sew is going to stretch. So if you don't want to end up with everything all rumply, then on the wrong side, either interface the whole thing with something really light, like, you know, SF 101 or anything you can find, or cut strips, just 1-inch strips, and fuse them on the edges so that when you're sewing, it won't stretch anymore and it'll be easier to sew it for you. Okay, you can see I sewed around and I trimmed the seam allowances down. I didn't trim them down here because I'd like to have some maneuvering room. I'm going to press this up so that I can easily close it afterwards. I'll know where the seam allowance goes, right? And the other thing you might notice is I put interfacing on one of the layers, but not the other layer. And I pressed both pieces so that they would match up nicely. So now I can turn it, and then I can press it again, and I can top stitch it. And when I top stitch it, I can close that opening at the bottom up. And after the top stitching, we can press it again and we'll be finished. There, sewn, turned, and pressed, and it's nice and sharp. I like that. Now you'll notice if you fold it, I haven't top stitched it yet, but if you fold it, these guys are right side up. Here's your pet's head, and these guys will also be right side up. So if it does end up getting twisted a bit, or if it ends up, you know, one side shorter than the other, you can still see right side up animals when you're looking at them. So I'm just going to top stitch this closed and we will be finished. Okay, it's all top stitched now. We even sealed up our opening when we top stitched. Now you can see when it's folded over, even if it ends up lopsided or turned up or something, this direction and this direction are still the same, so we're all good. So now we just tie it onto our pup. I don't have a neck to tie it on. And we're finished. Now let's go on to our next gift. So first let's start with some prep work. I've got a little patch here of fabric, and I'm going to sew it on here and then fold it back and then fold it back again. This doesn't fray, so I don't know if I actually have to fold it again to hide that raw edge. We'll see as I'm sewing how it goes. But first, right sides together. Let's sew it on. And then I'll come back and show you how it gets all folded up. Oh, and don't forget to put your zipper pull on. And don't forget this goes on the other side from your zipper pull. Okay, so I've sewed it on right sides together. I've got my pull on. I fold this over, and I'm just going to fold it again. I'm not going to double fold it because this won't fray or anything. So I'm just going to clip this. And I'll sew just edge stitch down here to keep the tab on. The next thing I have to do, and this isn't in the pattern because what I did was I cut out the pattern piece and I added 1/2 inch here for seam allowance because I don't have a piece of this big enough to make the whole piece. So I'm going to make half the piece this and half the piece this. If you do have a print, you have to keep it out of this section here because this is the base. So this is going to end up being folded over. And ultimately, this is what your pouch is going to look like. So I'm going to sew this onto here. Sew these together like that. These are really sturdy clips. I can barely get them open with my little weak hands. And then when you open it up, right, it's going to look like that. And then I've got another one for the back to do. So I will do some sewing and come back and show you what everything looks like. I wonder if I could top stitch in there too. I wouldn't want to top stitch on the side that has the octopus because it kind of ruins the look of the octopus, right? Yeah, no, I'm not going to top stitch it down. I could probably top stitch this side and stick a nice line down here on the blue. We'll see what it looks like when I'm finished. And then the other thing that I'm going to sew is I'm going to put a label on here. I've got a couple of different kinds. Oops, don't want to put it upside down, but I'll put a label on the inside. Center it, make it look good. So, I'm gonna finish the zipper, sew these two fronts together, and sew on my label. Okay, so I've got my label put on the inside. Here's another inside. I've got the interfacing on the back of that already. And see how I did these. This is the way the piece is supposed to look, but I didn't have enough for a whole piece. Not two of them anyway, just one of them. So I cut them in half and made two. So the outsides will be octopus and octopus. I sewed them, and I did manage to top stitch, but I top stitched on this side only because I don't want to mess with the that really cool print. I don't have any more of it neither. So I think I'm going to, I can't fuse it because this stuff doesn't fuse anymore, but I think I'm going to zigzag around the edges and just attach this onto here with a zigzag, and that should give it maybe a little bit more shape to it. So I'll have to do that yet. The other thing I have to do is mark the stop sewing lines here, because she doesn't want you to go past. When you're sewing on zippers, you never go into the seam allowance. You never go close to the seam allowance. You never sew on your zipper tab, because if you do that, when you turn it, it's going to end up getting chewed up in the inside when you turn it out. So always make sure, I don't know where a mark is, I think I put it right there. Always make sure that when you put your zipper and line it up here, this is her little mark, don't go past her little mark. I know we want to make it really tight all the time in here, but don't do it because it'll really mess with your tab after you turn it. But this will give you an opportunity to turn it. If you have troubles going along here, you know, you can snip it a little bit, but sometimes when I snip it, I put fray check on it too, so that it kind of glues it down. I've got the wrong size zipper here, so I'm going to move this down when I sew it on, and I'm going to stop where she tells me to stop. And also we have to turn the zipper tab in here, right where the line is. But I'm going to clip it on here so you can see, and before I sew it, so that you understand what it's supposed to look like when we stick it on. Okay, I marked the lines on this side because I can't see them on the other side with the marking tools I have. And I also put this fusible fleece that doesn't fuse anymore on here, zigzagging only on this side and double-sided tape on this side, because the zigzagging was bunching everything up here and we don't want that. So you can use double-sided tape to attach the two. I'll have to get my walking foot out to sew when the time comes to sew this together. I have my zipper on here the proper way, and I'm staying out of the seam allowances that she's talking about. We don't want to go close to the edge. Okay, so I just sew it on this side, and then after I'll put the other one on and sew it on here, and make sure that I'm not going past her mark. So let's do some more sewing. Okay, it's sewn on one side. This is too long, and it does make a nice little arc. That's what I like about the top of this one. Now we can put it on the other side. And remember, we're doing the same. Follow along the curve and don't go past that mark that we have. And remember, we're folding this so that it curves. There, so now I can sew it on this side too, and then the outsides will be finished. Okay, this is starting to look really good. Even have an octopus for the pull. And I love the shape of this one. So now that we've got the outside sewn on, let's put the insides on. I really should cut those tapes off. So let's put our lining on. I've got this thing where I like to have a back and a front, even though the thing looks exactly the same no matter which side I look at. I want this to be the front with the pull going this way. So that means I want this one on there and this one on here. It's just something weird that I do. So which side are we going to put on first? Let's put this side on. We'll match up our centers and match up our little lines and our edges. Oh, yep, there's our line. And now we're just going to sew the lining on. And after we'll do the same with the other side, sew the lining onto it. Okay, we've got one side sewed on totally. Now we need to put the other side together. I've only got it clipped right now. And remember, when we're sewing, we're only sewing between the two lines here. Oh, I've got a clip on one of mine. But you can see there's two lines and we're sewing between those two lines. And then after that, let's see what it looks like here. Pretty good. Okay, the zipper is all sewed on, inside and outside. Now I clipped it just because I wanted to teach it which way you're supposed to sit. But I don't need it clipped right now because we're going to sew the linings together and we're going to sew the outer layers together. Let's start with the outer layers. Take that off. And we'll clip it. And when we get up to here, we're going to clip the seam allowances down and sew them down. Like that. So you see both sides of seam allowances folded down. And we're going to sew the outer layer independent of the lining. So just across here and across the bottom. Make sure your corner is matched up perfectly because I might have stretched this when I was trying to sew it. So we'll make sure those corners are good. And then we'll sew up the side again. And we'll make sure this is folded because it wants to anyway, right? You see how that's folded? And we'll sew our seam allowance. We're not going to sew on top of here. We don't even have to sew close to there. We just have to sew the seam allowance. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of a hole or a gap there. It looks better with a gap than it does with the zipper tab being chewed up. So for now, we're going to sew down and across and down. 3 different stitching lines. I really should cut these off. That's really bugging you. It's bugging me. Okay, I'm going to get some scissors and cut this off, and I'm going to sew my 3 stitching lines. Okay, this is all sewn. I went back and forth on here a couple of times, but I made sure that these folds were in there because it makes a nice finish that way. And I just did 1, 2, 3 sides. Now, hopefully your zipper is open because I forgot to ask you to do it. And you can see here, it looks pretty goofy because it's still got holes in the bottom. But we have to do this one first. I only want to sew the bottom enough so that I can turn it. So maybe I'm just going to go in 1 inch here, a couple of centimeters, so that I can leave this open so that I can turn it. Now, you want to sew here, and this side, just like the other one. Make sure your little corners are matched. And when you get up here, make sure this is folded as it wants to. There, so we're going to sew a little bit, and 1, 2. Okay, I've sewed it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Threads everywhere. Before I turn it, I'm just going to press this up with my iron because I want to know where that seam allowance is when I hand sew it, and I am going to hand sew this one because it's kind of obvious sometimes when you do it by machine, but this one, yeah, I just want to hand sew it. It's feeling pretty good to me, so I'm just going to iron this out so that I can see the seam allowance where it's supposed to be. And then it comes to boxing the corners. And when we box the corners, we want to make sure that one seam presses one way and one seam presses the other way, because then they'll lie flat nicely. So I can feel that. I can feel it there. And I'm going to put a clip in it so it stays. And a clip in the other side, I can feel the other side. And the end. And we're going to sew across here too. Now, when I'm sewing across here, it's not a straight line. Okay, it's because if you're really looking at it, it looks a little bit pointy, and that's okay. Just make sure you're consistent seam allowance up to this point and consistent seam allowance down to that point, and then it'll sit nicely for you. So I'm going to box these corners with my clips and then sew them. Make sure you're going the same direction. Otherwise, it'll be a rumpled mess underneath there. And this goes opposite. And it sits in there nicely. I think I've got an awful lot of threads to clip here. Ah! And we're going to do this with all 4 corners. There, I can finally feel it in there. Of course, we have to do these ones too. And again, make sure they're leaning in opposite directions because it helps to feel it, if you can feel that bump there. So we've got 4 things to sew. And I want to, oh, well, there's a little bit of press in there. I'm okay with if I finger pressed it so I don't have to iron it. Okay, so I'm going to get those sewed up. Okay, it's definitely a box pouch now. Let's stick our hand in, pull it through. Sometimes it feels better if you just pull the lining out and then just let the rest fall. Don't try and yank everything. Just get the lining the right way. And then after, do this. Now, if I could iron these materials, I would iron this down flat, but I can't. So I might stick a little bit of scrap material on here and clip it just so it gets used to sitting that way. Otherwise, I'm liking the look. And poke those out when the time comes to. And I have to hand sew this. So let's get some clips on there so I can hand sew it. Okay, I'll get some hand sewing done and then we'll be finished. Okay, it looks like I'm losing my light. I hand sewed the bottom. And if you're wondering what I meant by scrap materials, on the parts that I want to lie down proper, if I can't iron this, then I just leave it overnight with some of fabric protecting the vinyl, and I clip it to the way I want it to stay. So that's what I meant by scraps. Now, I could stuff it with some tissue paper and put a present inside, or I could just leave it as is. And there we have our little pouch. Wow, these things are big, even though this is the medium size, I think. There's still a large and extra large. Anyway, these are pretty big. So I could take these off now. They've been a while. And I've got another one to make. So how'd that go? Please share. We'd love to see what you've made. And hopefully you can knock off a few of these and take care of all those special people on your list. I want to say thank you to Cork and Copper Designs for letting me use their pattern. And if you have any questions about putting this one together, you know, the sizes or whatever, you know, just leave a comment or, you know, take a look at one of the links below and ask in the group. So thank you to the Marathon Sewciety for letting me join in again, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday.